Let's say welcome. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sartori. I'm with a company called Orthomolecular Products. We manufacture dietary supplements available exclusively through healthcare providers. I've been with the company for 5 years and kind of consider myself a pseudo expert in the mechanisms and applications of nutritional therapies. First and foremost, I would say welcome to the Nourished New Year, New You kickoff program. I'd say thank you all for being here. And for both you who are physically here and those who are tuned in or maybe watching a recording of this later. It's just kind of the new norm. This program, these 7 days, are hopefully the catalyst that will propel you to a very prosperous and successful 2021 in terms of your health and your own wellness journey. Obviously, 2020 has been a very challenging year for many people in a lot of different regards. But with that being said, I do hope that a silver lining can be found in all of this. And that silver lining is that you do have some control. The decisions that we make day in and day out in our lives, it does have consequences, beneficial consequences and negative consequences. It's no secret that generally speaking, people that have taken better care of themselves have more resiliency when life throws something at them like this challenge we are all currently facing. The industry word of the year has been resilience. What are you doing to make yourself more resilient? I've always thought of this, as it relates again to your health. There are two factors that play a major role in ultimately determining how resilient you are as an individual. There are positive signals and there are negative signals. Positive signals are those that build resilience: eating a healthy diet, exercising, going outside, nurturing healthy relationships, being aware of your environment, while negative signals are the opposite. Positive signals build resiliency, while negative signals tear down resiliency. The decision that you were making to be here today and to take on this 7-day challenge with all of your peers is hopefully a kickstart to a life of healthy signals and building strong resilience. I want you to picture, I guess I could have had physically done this, I have 2 cups of water. This cup over here, it's got a little bit of water in it. That's your existing toxic burden. The rest of that cup that you can fill, that is your capacity for detoxification. Over here, I have another full cup of water. This is your environment. When you start pouring this cup of water into your cup, if you don't have optimally functioning capacity for detoxification, or your detoxification systems aren't priming your body, that will inevitably overflow. This overflow in terms of health can manifest itself in many different forms of issues. It might be fatigue, it might be weight gain, it might be digestive issues, hair loss, hormonal imbalances, skin issues, and the list goes on and on. Hopefully you come from this presentation that I'm about to do for y'all with a little more, just come away from it a little more aware, in terms of your environment and what you can do to keep your body's ability to cope with this incoming toxic burden functioning optimally. And so with that, I'm going to dive right into this presentation. What are toxins, right? So toxins are any substance that have harmful effects on the body. When the GI tract is not functioning optimally, additional burden is placed upon the liver. When the incoming burden exceeds the liver's ability to deal with them, it is termed toxic burden. Toxins by nature are fat soluble. Basically meaning they are stored in different fatty tissues throughout the body. So sources of toxins, and this is something, we all do as much as we can to hopefully we're doing as much as we can to ultimately avoid a lot of these sources, but just being in the world that we live in, it's inevitable that we're coming in contact with these different toxins. So in the air, right? So factories, auto exhaust, solvents, heavy metals, these things are all, and the list kind of goes on, these things are all present in the air that we breathe. These are all things that ultimately need to be eliminated from the body. This was a study. So the US EPA biopsy, they were looking at PCBs, dichlorobenzene and xylene, taking tissue samples from individuals, and they found that 100% of people that they biopsied contained these toxins in their fatty tissues. So are you really at risk? Looking at some of these specific toxins that they were biopsying, carbonless copy paper, plastics, inks, paints, furnishings, construction glues, how many of these things are we coming into contact with, if not daily, by the minute? Xylene, outgases from plastics, carpeting, furnishing, construction materials, traffic exhaust. Again, these are things that we cannot avoid in our lives. Styrene, from computers, plastics, that hold the liquids that we drink and the foods that we eat, and even baby formula. So you think, well, I just have to keep myself inside. Obviously, that's not a viable means to protect ourselves, and it's actually oftentimes the environment in our homes are more toxic than the outside environments. This was another study by PA looking at the actual toxic exposure in homes. They found that we come in contact with 500 different environmental chemicals in our home environment. So again, kind of some more of these areas where toxins come from. The things that we apply to our skin in cosmetics and skincare, and nicotine and alcohol, caffeine, the drugs that were being prescribed, the over-the-counter drugs that we're self-medicating with. These are all toxins that ultimately have to be eliminated from the body. So a little bit more about the things that we put on our body, especially you women. The average woman is exposed to 126 unique chemical ingredients daily through skincare products. And I've heard this number is like within the first hour of awakening, or immediately introducing this massive burden that our body has to deal with. The skin is actually the body's largest organ. A lot of people know the skin is actually an organ. So kind of this list: parabens, synthetic preservatives. Many of these are found to be hormone disruptors, to create organ system toxicity, reproductive toxicity, infertility, developmental defects. The list kind of goes on and on and on. With more of these toxic sources, from our water that we're drinking, whether it's chemicals and solvents that are detergents that are being used to treat our water, to bacteria and heavy metals and nutrients such as phosphorus and nitrogen. These are all toxins that we're coming in contact with the water that we're drinking. Runoff and pesticides and different chemicals that are used in agriculture are all ultimately found in our water sources, as well as our food. So whether it's the processing and the refining of our foods, that's introducing food additives, colorings, and preservatives, to pesticides and herbicides, insecticides, antibiotics and hormones that our meats are being treated with. These, again, are all part of this massive toxic burden that we face every single day, that our body, our liver has to deal with. Again, kind of feel like I'm beating a dead horse here a little bit, but more toxic sources. These ones are a little bit more obvious with these different cleaning products that we use around the house, whether it's chlorine or ammonia-based products, phenol and cresol. These are just different chemicals that make up the cleaning products that we use around our homes, our bathrooms, and our kitchens. 26 seconds is all that it takes when we inhale a chemical for that chemical then to hit our bloodstream. And here, kind of going back to that earlier slide, studies of human exposure to air pollutants indicate that indoor levels of these pollutants may be 2 to 5 times higher than outdoor, and occasionally more than 100 times higher than outdoor pollutant levels. So we're really in a confined space. We're heavily saturated with these chemicals. So internal toxins, these are a lot of these byproducts of metabolic reactions: carbon dioxide, ammonia, hormones, the physiological processes that happen to keep our bodies running, to keep our cells producing energy. Byproducts of these reactions are toxins that need to be eliminated from the body. You might have bacterial, yeast, or fungal overgrowth, undigested food, proteins, stress, and unresolved trauma and abuse, and the stress that comes from that, and happy relationships, kind of going back to some of these negative signals that are all tearing down resilience. So I kind of went through some of these in the introduction a little bit, but signs that maybe your detoxification capacity might be impaired. Dr. Carter does have a questionnaire that can be used to kind of assess your potential need for detoxification or your toxic burden. But like I mentioned earlier, you have digestive issues, might be constipation, bloating, diarrhea, nausea, heartburn, metabolic issues, elevated cholesterol, blood sugar dysregulation, allergies, weight gain, hormonal imbalances, skin issues. I know there's a lot to go through here, but these are all signs that maybe you have excessive toxic burden, and that a simple detoxification could really do you a lot of good. So, why detox? When looking at 148 synthetic compounds, the CDC is going back to 2006. You can argue that urban environments become more toxic since, but the average American has 116 of these 148 synthetic compounds that were tested for. So dioxin, polycyclic hydrocarbons, organochlorine, pesticides. Kind of more concerning here, further studies reveal that these same substances were also found in human milk, in the placenta, umbilical cord blood, and the blood and body fat of newborns. So we're kind of born behind the 8 ball. We're born with a toxic burden that really shouldn't be there. The average umbilical cord blood contains 217 neurotoxins. 208 of these are which are known to cause birth defects. This is evident of how burdened our detoxification capacities are in today's extremely toxic environment. This is a really cool slide, something for those of you who are maybe looking to use this to kind of kick off a weight loss program. Maybe you've done some weight loss in the past. Maybe you plateaued, maybe you had weight gain, maybe you lost some weight and then immediately started putting that weight back on. Fat is actually created to protect the body from toxins. So if you take this picture and you take a 200-pound frame and it has an existing toxic burden, and you shrink that frame down to 150 pounds, not doing anything to address that existing toxic burden, you've just condensed that burden into a smaller frame. Inevitably, the body, to protect itself, will put fat back on. so it can better deal with that toxic burden. So what a proper detoxification allows you to do is to, again, going back, toxins are harbored in fat tissue. You start breaking down fat tissue, you're going to push toxins out into serum. If you don't have an optimally functioning detoxification system, you potentially are sabotaging the effect. So if you can prime those pathways, if you can get the body's detoxification systems working optimally, you then have somewhere that these toxins that are being stored and released to go, allowing you to ultimately, achieve and keep your weight loss goals. So this is kind of diving a little bit into the physiology of detoxification and how it works specific to the liver. It's essentially a two-phase process. Phase one involves a series of enzymes that are involved in basically detecting toxins and flagging these toxins. Like, hey, we got something we got to deal with, we got to get this out of the body. In doing this and flagging these toxins, it actually creates what's called an intermediary metabolite. These metabolites are often more toxic than the original fat-soluble toxin. Hence the need for phase two. So these phase two pathways are what are then responsible for taking these metabolites and converting them into a water-soluble compound that can then be easily excreted from the body via urine or stool. So you can kind of think of it as a back half, front half of the liver with these phase one activities and a back half of this liver with these phase two activities. I use a kitchen sink analogy, right? So you have a kitchen sink. That basin of that sink is your capacity for detoxification. The faucet, those are those phase one activities. The drain is actually those phase two activities. These phases, specifically phase two, are very, very nutrient dependent pathways. And because of our standard American diet and our food supply, we're generally deficient in a lot of these areas that can ultimately create problems as it relates to phase two. So going back to the sink, if you have a plugged up drain and you go ahead and just turn that sink on, you're gonna have issues. What we are working to do with the product that we have put together in Core Restore is basically we're heavily emphasizing on those phase two activities. This is the plumber that's gonna go in and unclog that drain that then allows you to go ahead and turn that water on, and now we have a sink that's functioning beautifully. We've got those phase one metabolites flowing down to the sink, and they're going through those phase two, where they're going through that drain. This is again just kind of going back. Get ahead of myself here. Going back, we talk about things that are potentially further impairing our capacity for detoxification, or those nutrients that are needed by the body to perform these activities. These are some of the drugs that, whether it's statins or PPIs or antibiotics, that are potentially depleting, you see over here on the left-hand side, my left-hand side, depleting nutrients that are necessary to the body to perform these functions. So another thing just to kind of keep in mind too. So the program itself, obviously we are looking to remove and eliminating that incoming toxic burden for a period of time, restoring, supporting the processing and eliminating of these nutrients, and revitalizing liver function and GI function and these different detoxification pathways that we need. So the program itself, if you all haven't seen it, this is the actual, what you would actually be receiving. Everything that you need for your 7-day detoxification is in here. It's actually a combination of 3 different products. And you'll notice kind of the reoccurring theme here. is nutrients specific to those phase 2 pathways. Your primary, or one of your primary sources of macronutrients throughout the entire program is core support. It's a powder that is kind of going back to that sink analogy. This is your drain, or this is your plumber that's coming in to unplug your drain, allowing for that flow of metabolites to be optimally processed and eliminated from the body. So we have 15 grams of protein, we have 5 grams of binder and bentonite, or fiber and bentonite. These are binders that are working within the GI lumen to make sure that we're binding up that bile, the toxic laden bile, and eliminating it from the body rather than having these toxins deconjugated and pushed back out the serum. Specific nutrients that are supporting these phase 2 pathways: N-acetylcysteine, acetyl-carnitine, alpha-lipoic acid. All these nutrients are not only critical for increasing cellular energy, which is really important as it relates to just the body's capacity for energy and these really energy sapping or energy demanding systems in the body, like the liver and your capacity for detoxification. Secondly, again, we go back, to some of those early slides, and we look at just the amount of nutrients that are needed to perform these functions, for these phase 1 and phase 2 activities. That's what we are supplying with Alpha Base. This is a ultra concentrated, high quality, highly bioavailable, multivitamin, multi-mineral, supplying all the nutrients, all the micronutrients that you need for the body to process toxins through these two phases. And then lastly, as far as the product or the supplements are actually concerned, this is Vitacore. So this is helping with more of that physical elimination of your conjugated or your bound up toxins. So your lipotropics, things are going to help to emulsify fat. Your choleretic and choligoids. The liver is binding up these toxins. It's holding it in bile. It's dumping it into the GI tract. These nutrients, your dandelion, your beetroot, etc. These are all encouraging this bile secretion and bile dumping, and then silymarin to support glutathione levels, especially in the liver. This is a really important part. This is everything that you need to kind of get yourself through the 7 days as it relates to the food that you're buying, the food that you're eating, the recipes that you're creating, and your daily supplement protocol. We make it really, really, really easy for you to go about these 7 days. The diet you're going to be following, and this is a question that comes up a lot because for those of you who have detoxed in the past, you know that like some of the diets can be really weird. Like you can only eat pears for 7 days, or you can only drink lemon water for 7 days. This isn't like that. This follows a standard elimination diet that's commonly used in medicine, especially to help determine food allergies. So we're taking the top 10 most common allergens: gluten, dairy, soy, eggs, etc. And we're eliminating from the diet for 10 days. A great way to identify food sensitivities is to begin slowly reintroducing these foods. If you suspect there's some food sensitivities there, slowly reintroducing these foods one at a time and see where reactions might be occurring. But like I said, we're walking you through foods that you're avoiding, the supplements that you're taking, when to take them, when you're eating, everything that your recipe guide, everything that you're going to be eating, that there's actually a grocery list that you tear out of the book and you take to the store with you, and you buy everything on that list, and that's going to provide you the 7 days of food that you need to get through the program itself. And then we even work this thing out all the way through 28 days, so depending on what your goals ultimately are. But this is a really powerful slide, and this is what you can expect, as you work through the 7 days, as you come out the back end of the 7 days. Energy levels are up, you're sleeping better, obviously you're going to lose weight going through these 70 days. better mental acuity, your digestive functioning is improving, bowel movements are more regular, you've alleviated some of that gas and bloating, your skin looks better, your hair looks better. Your hair looks better, you know, everything that you could possibly want out of the 7 days. And again, the whole goal of this isn't to just do this for 7 days and be done, you know, kind of use this as the catalyst, you know, that can ultimately, or hopefully, you know, propel you through, you know, the following or the ensuing weeks and months and years, you know, kind of going back to this idea of, you know, resiliency and building resiliency, and what are you doing for yourself to build your own resiliency. You know, it is ultimately, you know, the best thing that you can do to protect yourself. You know, it's really the only protection that you have. And it's kind of a great start, and I commend all of you for who are going on the 7 days, you know, considering going on the 7 days. I know Dr. Carter's got some really cool things lined up with some of the things that we're doing as far as engagement throughout. So, you know, leverage the group setting, leverage your peers, you know, get your spouses, get your friends involved, and you can make a really fun kind of event of 7 days and see what you can accomplish. That kind of does it for me. If anybody has any questions, I'm here for you.
How often should a person detox? Is it something you want to do monthly or months?
It depends. I mean, I think, you know, no more than quarterly is probably necessary. You might do it annually, you might do it biannually. It's really going to depend on the person and what ultimately their goals are. Yes?
What ages are safe to detox?
I would consider this for adults. I mean, so kind of the easy cut would be, you know, 18 and on.
Are there any medical conditions that would make it dangerous to do a detox?
I would work with Dr. Carter. I would consider, you know, obviously, diabetics might have some concerns in working through this. Anything else? All set? Cool. Thank you.